Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mariah and I talk about books and bookish things on my channel. If you're returning, I'm really happy to have you guys back. Thank you so much for stopping by again. It means so much to me every time I see one of you comment down below. So this is my July 2020 wrap up. And it was actually a great reading month. I read 17 books. I participated in 2 readathons, one that was month long, which is Our Lost Library's Lost-A-Thon, meant to diversify our reading, and the other was Becca at Becca and the Books BookoplAThon, which was a 48-hour readathon, and I read 4 books during it. I was really fortunate in that I completed every single prompt in the Lost-A-Thon board, and I completed the 4 books I needed to win at Becca's BookoplAThon, which was a really unique way of doing a readathon in that she dropped the prompts for the readathon every 12 hours. So you couldn't really build a TBR, and it was fantastic. I really enjoyed my time doing it. I'm actually going to I'm going to go through the books that I read in chronological order according to my Storygraph. If you haven't checked out Storygraph, it's in beta right now, but it is a great alternative to Goodreads. They just revamped the For You, the Ordered For You, which is like book recommendations based off what you like to read. They just revamped their your book section, so now you can filter and sort your TBR, and you can filter and sort your read books, including books you DNF'd. They have an option for that. And you can mark them as owned. And on top of all of this, and this blows my mind every time I do this, you can actually sort it by year and what month you've read it in that year. So for instance, I have it pulled up on my phone so I could do this chronologically. And it's literal perfection. I love this website so much. Go sign up. It's great. You can import your Goodreads library. Now, this video isn't sponsored. They're still in beta. But today's drink of choice is actually just water. I had lavender latte earlier, and it was delicious, but it's hot outside, and you need to stay hydrated. Drink water. The first book I read this month was Skin Folk by Nello Hopkinson, which is a short story collection based on Afro-Caribbean folklore, and it is African futurism, Caribbean folklore. This book satisfied a lot of prompts for the Lost-A-Thon TBR. It satisfied black speculative fiction, beautiful cover art, characters of every color, a book with a message, love is love, diverse author, diverse retelling, empowerment. It's all about pride, woman of color, mythology, and a BIPOC book, which again, that's BIPOC, meaning Black and Indigenous People of Color. So this satisfied, just this book alone, made it to where I won the Lost-A-Thon TBR, which the idea was to have 5 prompts randomly that you completed and you could stack the books. I gave this short story collection 5 out of 5 stars. It was a fantastic amount of diversity and representation. I obviously can't speak to Caribbean, the LGBTQIA plus representation, or the obviously the black representation in this book, but what I can say is that as a cis white female, that's what I am, I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. It was a fascinating look at retellings of stories that I had heard occasionally before. I'm not very familiar with Caribbean folklore, but it was fantastic. There is sci-fi, there is horror, there is just weird speculative fiction, there's fantasy, there's stories about love and gender identity and dealing with your identity and deciding to change that identity trying to figure out where you match there. There's a story in here for everyone. And one of my favorite things was that some of the stories are actually told in the English dialect that is spoken in the Caribbean, which is sort of a mix of French and English, and I really appreciate when books are written, or when stories are written in the vernacular of the people that speak that area. I think it adds a sense of realism to a fantastical story. I've read this book, I think it took me 2 days just because I have to sleep, and it was 5 out of 5. 5 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend this book to anybody that's looking for a great entrance point into speculative fiction, who wants horror, who wants something different than what they would normally get in a lot of short story collections. Pick this up. Pick this up. It's also Own Voices. I forgot to mention that. It's Own Voices as well. Next, I listened to Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. This is actually the first of 2 books I read by her this month, and it was fantastic. This is a novella that satisfied a prompt for Becca's BookoplAthon, and it could also work for Black speculative fiction, a book recommended to me, a book with a message, empowerment. So this tells the story of a young woman named Binti who is accepted into the #1 university in the galaxy and boards a ship as the only one of her people that has ever left her homeland. On her way to this university, her ship is attacked, and the people on it, other than her, are all killed by a race of jellyfish aliens called the Medusae. And how she survives and whether or not she makes it to the university and how all of that works together. I don't want to get too far into the story because it is such a short book. I think it was about a 3-hour audiobook, and I couldn't stop listening to it once I started. It was really, really fantastic. I would highly recommend this for sci-fi lovers, and also just for a lot of, like, a really quick but solid audiobook that really drove her points home. This is the first book in a series, and I'm very excited to read the rest of them. I just haven't picked them up yet because I had a lot of books to read this month, guys. Next, I read Magic Bites by Ilona Andrews, which is the first book in the Kate Daniels series of urban fantasy. This satisfied the random number generator on Goodreads that was in my TBRNM video at the beginning of the month. It also satisfied a prompt for Becca's BookoplAthon, and it also satisfied the empowerment prompt from Lost-A-Thon. This book is an urban fantasy that's set in Atlanta, where magic has entered our world and has kind of reshaped the way that society interacts with each other. There's now times where magic cuts out, and so you have to be able to use regular technology, but there are times where magic just kills regular technology, so you have to use magic-infused technology. The world building was fantastic. I really enjoyed this setting in Atlanta because in a lot of those places I've been to Atlanta and I know what they're talking about. I think I gave this book 3 stars. And again, I just want to remind everybody, 3 stars is not a bad rating for me. It just means that it was kind of meh. It's not that I disliked it. It just wasn't for me. My biggest issue with this book was not the story. The story was very interesting. It starts out with Kate Daniels finding out that her mentor and the man that pretty much raised her has gone missing and then was killed. and she gets dragged into this world where she's trying to prevent a war between the shifters, led by the Beast Lord, and the vampires are not, like, they don't go to war. Good storyline. I especially appreciate the fact that various cultures were brought in, and it wasn't just, oh, Western shifters and Western vampires. And I really appreciated that. I really appreciated the world building. I thought the story was pretty solid. My only issue with this was I didn't like the main love interest and her. I didn't like their relationship together. I didn't like how quickly it went from like 75% of the book they hated each other, or were at least antagonizing each other, and then the last 25% they were fine. I will probably continue in the series, but again, just I have to see how it plays out in later books to really make a judgment on this. The next book I read was Scavenged Stars by Tara Sim. This was the final book that I read for Becca's BookoplAthon. It satisfied empowerment and a diverse author for the Lost-A-Thon TBR. And this is the Owl Crate edition. That's why the cover is different. I get Owl Crate once a month, so that's why I have a lot of Owl Crate editions of books. This for me was a 4 out of 5 star book. It was fantastic. I loved it. I devoured it in a matter of hours. And it is a retelling / adaptation of the story of the Count of Monte Cristo. So the idea is Amaya is a girl who was sold into essentially indentured servitude to pay off her father's debts. Her father was unjustly accused of being a criminal and was executed, and then she was sold into essentially a slave ship for a period of 7 years, where she is abused and starved, and just, it's an awful thing. And 2 weeks before she is set to get off the ship, she saves a drowning stranger, and time gets tacked on. Well, come to find out, this stranger is willing to help her make her dreams of revenge come true, as long as she helps him complete his own vengeance mission against the Mercado family. The Mercado family is a powerful trading family whose eldest son, Kaio, is kind of a playboy, or he was, and he's recently changed his ways, but his father still keeps him on a very short leash. Something happens, and their paths begin to intersect, and I don't want to get too far into this because it is part of what makes this so good is the ending, which obviously I'm not going to discuss here, and part of what makes it so good is all of the intricate ideas. In this book, there are LGBTQIA+ characters. There is... I really liked Amaya and how and her behaviors. She's a very gray character, but you understand why she's doing what she's doing and why she feels like she has to, and you understand her reactions to things. I really liked the fact that Kaio was bi, canonically bi, in this story, and it was just part of his character. It wasn't overly emphasized, it wasn't underemphasized, it was just part of him, and I really appreciate that. Again, I cannot speak to the representation. I just enjoyed that it was included in the book. This is a medium-paced book. It's engaging. I can't wait for the second book to come out, which is Ravage the Dark. I follow Tara Sim on Twitter, and she's been dropping hints every now and then and I'm dying a little bit. I need to know how my babies are doing. Harrison, please don't kill any of them. I love them so much. Again, if you want an adventure, if you want a story of revenge, and if you want the kind of an angsty love, or angsty potential love, this is the book for you. Again, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It was fantastic. Highly recommend. The next book I read was The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. This was, I think this satisfied a Becca's BookoplAthon. This didn't satisfy anything for Lost-A-Thon TBR, but it is a classic fantasy novel that my very dear friend Talon picked up for me. This tells the story of the last unicorn and how she ventures out of her wood to try to find out what happened to all the other unicorns. And it was funny and moving, and it had these weird little quirks to it that sometimes work out in the author's favor and sometimes don't. But in this case, they really did. It added a really cute note to it. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, or 4.5 out of 5 stars, mostly because it was a great fantasy retelling. It talked about growth and love and how people keep trying and trying and trying to have these amazing they keep trying and trying and trying to make themselves happy by getting things, by buying things, by experiencing things, instead of trying to figure out what makes them happy from within. And it also talks about greed and how people are willing to watch other people suffer in order for them to keep what they have. I thought it was really good. It was a quick read, 200 some odd pages, but it was really, really good. And it's Ursula K. Le Guin, Tad Williams, and Patrick Rothfuss all put blurbs on here, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's a really unique magic unicorn tale. Next I read White Rage, The Unspoken Truth on the Racial Divide by Carol Anderson. Sorry if the lighting's changing. We have a thunderstorm system rolling through. This satisfied the prompt for non-traditional nonfiction, a diverse author, and woman of color for the Lost-A-Thon TBR. This was, I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was challenging and hard to read, just like Dr. Ibram X. Kendi's Stamped from the Beginning. This, instead of focusing on the ideas of racist thought in America, this focused on the ways that white people in power and white rage, that idea of, and what I mean by that is the anger that white people felt towards blacks and continue to feel towards blacks, and somehow how people feel as if they're being threatened when people are being granted more rights than they had before. Not that it's more rights than white people, it's just more rights than blacks had before. This was a very interesting look at history because this focused more on the direct outrage that people felt and the direct outrage that was targeted towards blacks to strip them of their voting rights and strip them of their civil rights after the Civil War. It was a fascinating read. It was also terrifying. So there's that. Next I read A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Oh wait, it's right here. The Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It satisfied love is love and empowerment for the Lost-A-Thon TBR. This was slow to start, but so good. I had watched the first season of the TV show, which second season isn't out yet, and I really enjoyed it. And this also satisfied the mom picks TBR name prompt. This tells the story of Diana Bishop, and who is a witch studying at Oxford, and she accidentally summons a manuscript and sets off a chain of events that defines the rest of the book. And one of the people that ends up coming to investigate this manuscript and how she summoned it, considering she doesn't use her witch powers very often, is a vampire named Matthew Claremont. This was a very interesting blend. Fantasy, historical facts, romance. My family's descended from the Bishops, way back when, obviously. So that was really fun for me to read. And all of the characters in this book, they each provided something unique. No one character was meant to serve the same role. For instance, Diana's aunts, Sarah and Em, are actually a lesbian couple and are fiercely protective over her. And it's sad and it made me cry. I'm awful at wrap-ups apparently. If you want a good wrap-up, please go watch A Book Circus. I'll leave her link down below. She's fantastic at wrap-ups and I suck. Kind of addicting. One thing that was really frustrating, but also really cool, was there's some heavy petting in this book, but there's no explicit smut, and it's not heavily, there's no explicit smut, and surprisingly enough, there's no sex. Which I'm not going to say made me a little upset, but I figured once I got that. Anyways, very good book. 4 out of 5 stars. I will definitely be picking up the next in the series. Eventually. We all know how I am about series. The next book I read was The Fangirls Guide to the Galaxy, a handbook for girl geeks by Sam Maggs. This is, this could have satisfied the non-traditional nonfiction. This could have, and empowerment as well. This is a very cute little book. I bought this a few years ago, and it talks about being a fangirl, or a fan in general, but specifically the idea of a fangirl. And it interviews famous female creators and people in the various various industries that people like, film, games, stuff like writers. And it also talks about like how to survive a convention and the different fandoms and dealing with trolls, but it also talks about how important it is to the fan community to be intersectional. This is a little out of date now, some of the things it talks about, because it was written in 2015. I really appreciate how it talked about like how being a feminist means not that women are more valid than men, or that only biological women are women. We all know that that's BS, and if you don't, I'm sorry. Welcome to my channel. We are LGBTQIA plus friendly here. For me, if you don't like LGBTQIA plus rep, and you don't like talking about intersectionality, and you don't like talking about supporting of Black Lives Matter, Indigenous rights, or how the refusal to grant those rights to anybody is not American and is a crime against humanity, you might want to unsubscribe now. All books are political. This one is no different. I really enjoyed this because it talked about great heroines in games and video and movies and shows and the different types of fandoms and the different the different vocab from Tumblr and Fangirls and Twitter, and how important it is to be represented in media. This is really cute. It's fantastic. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's just a little outdated. This was before Gamergate. This was before She Who Must Not Be Named started her shenanigans on Twitter. And this is, so for that reason it dropped my rating a little bit lower, but it has an important message and it was really cute. And I hadn't heard the phrase Superwholockian in a long time. Superwholockian, for those who don't know, is Supernatural, Doctor Who, and Sherlock. Superwholockian. Me. Yeah, so it was really cute. I might go into a bit of more deep dive on this and maybe read or watch some of the shows, or try to interview people who are part of those fandoms and maybe do a deep dive on this. We'll see. Next I read The Soul of an Octopus, A Surprising Exploration and Infinite Wonder of Consciousness by Cy Montgomery. This was for my psychology prompt for my TBRnium. It was also satisfied the non-traditional nonfiction prompt and walk a mile prompts, depending on how you interpreted it. For the Lost-A-Thon, I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, or 4.5 out of 5 stars? I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I annotated the heck out of it, and I've done a review for this already, so I'm not going to get super far into it. Please look at the cards, and if you want to watch that review and listen to the message. This book will always have a near and dear place to my heart. It talks about the authors. It's part memoir, part science book about cephalopods, specifically octopuses. And how the author gets to know 4 distinct octopuses and how each octopus represents a different personality, and made her question what she knew about consciousness and whether animals have this, perhaps, whether or not animals have intelligence, specifically invertebrates have intelligence, which was really interesting. It also had a very diverse cast of characters, and it had a lot of really touching moments. I cried twice while reading this. 4.5 out of 5 stars, highly recommend. Next I finished the audiobook, The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. This satisfied Love is Love. It satisfied Love is Love, empowerment, yes. Oh, an indie book. This was a very interesting sci-fi book. So it tells the story of Jair, who is a caver on this planet, and her main motivation is that she wants to make enough money to go find her mother, who left years ago. And she gets hired by M, who gives her the state-of-the-art suit, because there are these things called tunnelers that are attracted to heat and sound. And Jair doesn't know why he's going down there, because she's not looking for, M is not attached to a mining corporation, which is predominantly what cavers are for. She's not looking for mineral deposits, and Jair begins to suspect that she can't entirely trust M. Throughout the book, it's only the 2 characters. There are no other side characters, really, and you see this slow descent into madness, as well as some action scenes, and you're starting to get that claustrophobic feeling. And the narrator for this book was fantastic. She really brought both characters to life, and she really added that claustrophobic, almost paranoid aspect to the telling of the story that I really, really, really enjoyed. And it's slow paced and dark and emotional and tense, and you're not sure if Gyre's losing her mind or if M is like twisting things around because she controls the like interfaces. It was really good, surprisingly. I thought I wasn't going to like it, and I ended up giving it 3.75 out of 5 stars. I thought this book was great, but I had an issue with how the characters acted sometimes. I understood why they did it, I just didn't really like them. I also had an issue, kind of the hypocrisy of the main character at times. And so for that reason, it was a good book. 3.75 out of 5 stars. It's just, I was editing this video and realized that it was well over an hour long, so I decided to break it up into 2 parts. You just finished watching part 1. So if you want to keep watching part 2, stay tuned on Sunday, where I will put up part 2 of this wrap-up, because it is hella long. Like hella long. So I have to do some creative editing. I'm going to slide that in, and then you want to see part 2, it'll be, I will edit this description and put it down below as soon as it's up. And so here is all the best wine, coffee, and books to you. Cheers.